causing a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And therefore it follows that Israel had no right to use force to enforce an illegal blockade. And the law is very straightforward. Some of you may want to argue contrarily, well, but doesn't Israel have the right to prevent the weapons from going to Gaza? Well, first of all, as I said, in fact, under international law, no, it's not clear that they have the right to prevent weapons from going to Gaza. But the more important point is Israel never even pretended that there were weapons on the Freedom Flotilla. Israel was offered the opportunity to verify by a neutral body such as the Red Cross that there was no ammunition, there are no weapons on the Mavi Marmara. Israel expressed no interest in exercising that option. So, as the panel of the mission of the Human Rights Council concluded, Israel's actions were clearly illegal under international law. Another interesting question, which I don't think has been fully explored, is even if you're of the opinion that Israel had the right to block the flotilla from going to Gaza, an obvious question is, but then why did they resort to violent force? Even Israeli naval officials acknowledged, they said, Israel could have disabled the propeller on the boat, they could have disabled the rudder on the boat, they could have disabled the engine on the boat, and then just towed the boat to the Israeli port of Ashdod. Israel has a formidable navy. It could have simply physically blocked the Freedom Flotilla from getting to Gaza. Even on Israel's own terms, what it did didn't make any sense. Because as most of you recall, in fact I'm sure all of you recall, the day after the assault in the Mavi Marmara, Israel kept saying in its defense, it kept saying, we didn't expect violence. We expected that they would just engage in passive civil disobedience. We didn't expect them to resort to force. We thought they believed in Gandhian nonviolence. Okay, but if that's true, then why did you launch the assault in the dead of night? And why did you commence the assault using percussion bombs, tear gas, and maybe plastic bullets? If you really didn't expect violence, which is what Israel emphatically insisted on, then why didn't it just board the boats in broad daylight and bring along lots of journalists to demonstrate their peaceful intentions? The reasonable inference is that Israel wanted a bloody confrontation, although probably not on the scale that ensued after the Israeli commandos panicked at the passengers' determined resistance and then exacted more deaths. That's basically the picture of what happened as far as we know so far. I think of equal importance is what's coming, because for Israel a real problem has now developed. It suffered a succession of military defeats in 2000 and 2006. It tried to undo the damage by its assault on Gaza, but most people did not interpret Israel's assault in Gaza as a very impressive display of its martial prowess. Most people, including in the Arab Muslim world, saw it more as a display of cowardice, what was done in Gaza. Shameless cowardice. And then Israel suffered the number of setbacks in its commando operations. One in Dubai in the earlier part of the year. Even though they successfully assassinated a Hamas leader, it turned into a diplomatic disaster because it was done so ineptly. The assassination team's killing of the Hamas leader. And then there was the bungled operation in the Mavi Marmara, to which I'll return in a moment. So Israel suffered a succession of military defeats. It suffered a large number of bungled commando operations. And now Israel sees this axis forming in the Arab Muslim world: Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, and then out of the blue, Turkey. Israel's hitherto Israel's foremost ally in the Muslim world. And along comes this guy named Prime Minister Erdogan, and Erdogan is getting carried away. He meets with the Israelis in Davos in the earlier part of the year after the assault in Gaza, and he publicly starts saying to the Israeli President Perez, he says that, you Israelis, you sure know how to kill. Then Mr. Erdogan gets really out of control, and he teams up with the head of state of Brazil to try to negotiate a diplomatic settlement over the nuclear issue with Iran. So what's going on here? These Muslims, these Arabs, are just getting out of control. The natives are getting restless. They're getting too big for their britches. I mean, Erdogan thinks Turkey is important. It's time to cut these people down to size. And so now Israel has to cut these people down to size, and the Israeli mindset, the reason why these Arabs, these Muslims are getting so carried away is because they don't respect our military prowess. They've had a succession of embarrassing defeats. And they climaxed with the assault on the Mavi Marmara, because the assault on the Mavi Marmara was carried out, executed by Israel's naval commandos. And those naval commandos are Israel's elite fighting unit. They are the creme de la creme of the Israeli fighting force. And their performance on the Mavi Marmara was not brilliant. The Israelis said that it was a disgraceful fiasco, a national humiliation. Not because nine passengers were killed, that's swatting flies, but because of the performance of the commandos against the passengers on the boat. 3 of the Israeli commandos, the best fighting unit, 3 of them were captured in the course of the assault. And a former U.S. Marine, who's now a British citizen, Ken O'Keefe, he later said that the 3 who were captured, he said they looked like frightened children in the face of an abusive father. They look like frightened children in the face of an abusive father. Well, some of you are laughing, and the very fact that you're laughing is no laughing matter for Israel, because that's not the image Israel wants to project to its foes or its friends of Israel's fighting force, let alone of the Israel's elite naval commandos. One Israeli general said after the assault in the Mavi Marmara, he said, it's one thing for people to think we're crazy, that's okay, but it's bad when they think we're incompetent and crazy. That's the way we look. And so now Israel has to do something in order to restore the Arab world's fear of it. And has to do something pretty spectacular. As far as one can tell from now, Israel is targeting Lebanon in order to restore its deterrence capacity. The former U.S. ambassador to Israel, Daniel Kurtzer, he recently wrote that the speculation is Israel will attack Lebanon in the next 12 to 18 months. And as we're sitting here, you see, if I can use the expression, we see before our eyes the sinister plot unfold. The United Nations Security Council, its assigned role is going to be to soften up Lebanon before Israel goes in for the kill. So if you look at the developments, say, in just the last week or so, first of all, Israel announced that it was withdrawing from the northern part of the village of Gadjar on the Lebanese-Israel border. Now that was quite surprising news because, as we all know, Israel is the house guest that never leaves. And so why was it withdrawing from Gadjar? I immediately understood, and they sounded modest, but I knew exactly what was going on, because under UN Resolution 1701, which was passed after the 2006 war, it had 2 crucial conditions. On the Israeli side, they had to withdraw from Gadjar, the northern part of Gadjar. And then on the Lebanese side, they have to disarm Hezbollah. And so Israel announced, we're in compliance with 1701, so now it's time to put Hezbollah in compliance with 1701. And it wasn't surprised. The next day I looked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, and the first thing they said is, we're leaving Gadjar. Item 2, time to disarm Hezbollah. And then I turned to the United Nations website, their official website, and the home page. There was a little video, and the little video was one of the British reps. His name is Michael Williams. And Michael Williams is the UN Special Representative to Lebanon. And they have a little video of him announcing Israel is leaving Gajar. And now it's time to implement the whole of 1701. Okay. And then, as you know, in the next week or so, the Special Tribunal on Lebanon is supposed to deliver its indictments on who killed Rafiq Hariri, the Lebanese Prime Minister in 2005. Now, does anyone want to guess who the STL, the Special Tribunal in Lebanon, is going to indict? Well, of course, they're going to indict Hezbollah for the killing of Hariri. And then you watch how all the Western powers, how they all act in concert, and each of them gets a cameo appearance. So when Netanyahu announced the withdrawal from Gajar, he said, I'm doing it on the recommendation of the Italian foreign minister. So now all of a sudden, the Italian foreign minister gets his little cameo appearance in the plot. And then a few days ago, the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, it had a special investigative report based on leaked information from the STL on who killed, the title was Who Killed Rafiq Hariri. And guess who CBC concluded on the basis of its special investigative report using secret leaked information, guess who they concluded killed Rafiq Hariri? Well, of course, Hezbollah. And so everybody gets to play a part as the UN Security Council, which regrettably has become in the since 1991, the UN Security Council has become the main instrument for death and destruction in our world. It's a sorry commentary, but it happens to be accurate, I think. And they perform the role of softening the target. So they're going to say Lebanon is in violation of Resolution 1701, and they're going to start with the resolutions, then will come the sanctions to put pressure on the Lebanese, to pressure Hezbollah to disarm. Then the STL, the Special Tribunal on Lebanon, is going to indict the Hezbollah, and that's going to create discord between the Shia and Sunni in Lebanon because Mr. Hariri was Sunni, and there's a lot of sectarian passion over the issue of who killed Rafiq Hariri. And so they're going to now orchestrate the dissent and discord among the Lebanese, internally weaken them, and then when the right moment comes, Israel will find a pretext, as it always does, to go in for the kill. It's all quite sinister, in my opinion. It's all quite evil, if we can use that word. And it's also playing with fire. The Israelis have already made clear what they're going to do in Lebanon. They said that we're going to continue to apply the Dahya doctrine. Anyone here from Lebanon in the audience? Raise your hand. Okay, so if you're from Lebanon, you'll know much better than I do. Then the Dahya is a southern suburb of Beirut, and it's the home to the mostly poor Shia population, which is very loyal to the Hezbollah civilian population. And in 2006, when Israel attacked Lebanon, it turned the Dahya into a parking lot. There was nothing.